See, in an animated way. Right, we go. At the very beginning, God made the whole world, and it was good. He made Adam and Eve, the first man and woman, in his image, like little mirrors reflecting what he was like. And he placed them in a beautiful garden called Eden. God's world was very good. He gave Adam and Eve a job to do. They were to be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and rule it. And God ruled over them with his good word. He told them, "Don't eat the fruit of one tree, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It will kill you." They were to be God's people, a great nation, in God's place, Eden, enjoying the blessing of relationship with God. But sadly, it all went badly wrong. Adam and Eve were tricked by God's enemy, that snake, Satan, into doubting God's goodness. They believed Satan's lie that if they ate the fruit from the tree, then they would be like God, and so they ate it. But instead, as God said, it brought death as sin entered the world. Now sinful man couldn't stay in God's good place, Eden, and so Adam and Eve were cast out of God's place. No longer God's people. No longer enjoying the blessing of relationship with God. But on that sad day, God held out hope to Adam and Eve. He promised that there would come a day when one of Eve's children would crush Satan's head. But now that sin was in the world, things got much worse. The people on the earth were very wicked in their hearts all the time, every day, non-stop. Things got so bad, so fast, God decided to start again. He flooded the earth in judgment of the wickedness. But God rescued Noah and his family in an ark because they trusted God and believed what he said. So when Noah came out of the ark after the flood, God said, "Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth." Even though the world hated God, God loved the world and was still at work to bring about his good and loving plan. The problem was that Noah had the same sin problem that Adam did. And so very quickly things went badly wrong again. At its worst, a large group of people decided to build a tower in a place called Babel, to rival God and to show how clever and amazing they were without God. God wasn't impressed, and he wasn't very happy. So he scattered them across the world and mixed up their language so they couldn't do such evil again. But despite how bad things had got, God hadn't given up on his very good plan. Not long after Babel, God called a man named Abram, later called Abraham, and gave him some very big promises. He said, "Abraham, I'm going to bless you. I'll give you a land, a great land, fruitful and abundant, flowing with milk and honey, like the garden Adam and Eve enjoyed with me. And I'll give you children and make you into a people, a great nation. Your family will be as numerous as the stars in the sky and the sand on the shore. And through one of your offspring, all nations will be blessed. They will know the blessing of relationship with me under my good rule." Wow, what a promise! God promised to give to Abraham everything that was lost with Adam and Eve. And this time God would do everything himself to make sure that Abraham got his blessing. So even though Abraham was very old and his wife Sarah couldn't have children, God gave them a son, Isaac. God was keeping his promise. And despite Isaac's wife Rebekah being unable to have children, she had twins called Jacob and Esau. Now Jacob had 12 sons. The family was growing, but he had a favourite, Joseph. That made Joseph's brothers jealous. So they did a wicked thing. They sold him as a slave into Egypt, telling their dad that he'd been killed by wild animals. That sin problem was still there. But God was with Joseph, and God blessed him and the Egyptians through him, until he became Prime Minister of Egypt. And all of this was part of God's plan to keep his promise alive and save Abraham's family. Because soon a famine came across the whole land. But Jacob and his sons were taken in by Joseph into Egypt, safe and well, despite their wickedness, so that Joseph could say to them, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish the saving of many lives." God's good purpose for the world still stood, to restore what was lost at Eden, despite the mess they'd made, so that once more there might be God's people, in God's place, enjoying the blessing of relationship with him. How was that?
So I think I had a little bit of